Musical resolution. What is it? How do I use it? And do I even need to learn about this? These are all questions that I had. For a long time, I didn't understand what this concept was, but looking back at the 220 beats I've made in the last 6 months, I realized that I was actually using this concept without even knowing it. But now that I actually understand it more, it has allowed me to become a lot more intentional with my music and sped up my workflow considerably. So today I'm going to break down what musical resolution is, how it can be used, and then give specific examples that you guys can use in your next beat. So let's just dive right into it. What is musical resolution? To put it plainly, resolution is when a song reaches a note or a chord that is satisfying to the listener's ear. Without going too much into music theory, it's essentially when a note goes from being dissonant to being consonant, from building tension and then to releasing it, which is all that music is anyways. So that's why this concept is so crucial to understand. Honestly, the best way to explain resolution is to just hear it. In front of me, I've got a few chords. I'm going to play them and just explain a little bit more. So first we have D minor, and then we have F major, and then we have C major. And now these first two chords are considered dissonant chords. So these are the chords that actually build up the tension. If you just go back and forth between two dissonant chords, all you're gonna hear is tension. And the way to release that tension is to transition into a consonant chord. The C major is acting as the consonant chord, and it's resolving the previous two chords. See, these two chords generate a ton of tension, and the C major releases all that tension. If you just go back and forth between these two chords, it kind of feels a little off until you hit that C major. So you can go from here to here even. Perfect. So now that you understand a little bit more about what resolution actually is, let me give you an example of how it can be used within a scale. So in front of me, I have the C major scale. And if you don't know how to build scales, check out this video. All right, so the concept of consonant and dissonance in scales is actually super simple. I like to use this little technique that I've termed anchor points. The 3 anchor points that you want to be utilizing within each scale are the 1, the 5, and then the octave of the 1. And you can kind of hear how that sounds already. Really, it sounds really correct. And the way to think about these anchor points is these anchor points, the 1, 5, and the octave, are notes that are always going to resolve. So no matter what notes you put before or after these notes, they will always resolve into the 1, the 5, or the octave. So let me just show you an example. Let's get rid of every note in between and kind of stretch this out a little bit. We have the 1, the 5, and the octave of the 1. And now what you'll notice is I can put any notes I want in between these two notes, and as long as we reach these notes on the downbeats, it will resolve. So let me just show you an example. Let me just randomly place notes. Just, we're gonna stay in the C major scale for now, but we're just gonna randomly place some notes. Maybe go here, and then maybe go like that. And then we'll go back down to the 1 like this. So I've made the 1, the 5, and the octave longer just so you can hear them a little bit better. But notice how all of these notes in between adding dissonance to the scales. And then once you hit the 1, the 5, or the octave, all that tension gets released. And the cool thing about this is since we have this main structure laid out, the 1, 5, and the octave, the notes in between really don't matter at all because we're still going to be in the C major scale as long as we hit the 1, the 5, and the octave. It kind of gives you a little bit of wiggle room to wiggle outside of the scale if you want, add a couple blemishes. So let's add a D sharp here and maybe add an A sharp here. Now these notes are technically out of the scale, but it should still sound good just because we're building that tension and releasing it. Let's slow this BPM down a little bit just so we can hear it even better. Yeah, let's go down to like 90 BPM. All right, so I slowed down the BPM a little bit because it was a little fast and it was kind of hard to hear. These notes that are outside of the scale should still work simply because we're hitting these resolution notes. So I'm gonna make these a little bit longer just so that you guys can hear that it's still gonna work. And now this is kind of a bit of an extreme example. You wouldn't make these notes so emphasized, but if you notice, it kind of gives it that jazzy feeling going outside of the scale like that. It's a real common jazz technique to go outside of the scale. It just gives it that kind of groovy type of feel. All this tension that's being created here by these two notes will get resolved by this G. And this is just a super basic melody. I'm just trying to give you guys an example of what resolution is. And now there are a few tricks and guidelines that you can use when working inside of the scale. The first one is that the 2 of the scale will always resolve into the 1. So if we put the 1 here, and let's just start here with this, and then go down on this 2, this D is going to have a ton of tension that gets released right there by the C. Very nice, very nice. So that's tip number 1. Tip number 2 is that the 4 always resolves into the 5. So if we just switch this up a little bit, put this to the 5, put this to the 4, you can kind of hear that tension and release right here. Now, tip number 3 is that the 7 will always resolve into the octave. So let's take this G, put it up here to the octave of the C, and use this B as the 7. And this is going to create a ton of tension. And just for fun, let's throw a little 4/5 in here, just so we can resolve a little bit more tension. We'll do a little bit of a better example here. So we have the 1, tension, release, tension, release, back to the 1. Tension, release, tension, release. Sounds very nice, very nice. Now, resolution is super important in keeping your listener engaged. You wouldn't want a melody that just doesn't resolve at all because that's not going to sound good to the listener. But you also don't want a melody that's resolved for the whole time because that's not going to be very interesting and that's going to get very boring very quickly. I've come up with a couple melodies here. So here would be an example of a melody that doesn't really resolve at all. The top line melody just doesn't resolve. And you can kind of hear what I'm talking about. It feels incomplete and it just doesn't sound the best. Now, obviously, there's a time and a place for everything. This is just an example. Take a listen at this unresolved melody. You can really notice it when it loops. because you're kind of expecting it to resolve and it just doesn't resolve. Now let me show you an example of a melody that uses resolution. And just listen to the difference in the way that this melody sounds. It sounds very similar to the previous melody, but it just sounds way more complete and way more satisfying to listen to. So boom, there you go. That is musical resolution in a nutshell. Super quick video, what musical resolution is. I hope that you found value in this video. Feel free to send me any beats you've made or pretty much anything musical. I'll love to listen to it. Thank you for watching, and I will see you when I see you.